There are a lot of reasons police officers miss court dates. Often it's an innocent explanation.
But as Dane Placko investigates, a review of records by Fox 32 and the Better Government Association suggest that sometimes police miss court dates because they want the case to disappear.
I saw, flashing lights behind me.
Josh Garrett and his wife Diane Diaz were riding their bikes home after a concert in June of last year when they were stopped at 13th and Ashland by two Chicago police officers.
He asked why I was riding in the road, and I think my quick response was, well, where do you expect me to ride?
When it became clear things weren't going well, Garrett and Diaz pulled out a cell phone and began recording the encounter, which only made the police angrier.
Put down your phone.
You pulled us over for something that is not illegal.
You can explain it to the judge, and then you can either win the case or lose the case.
The couple was charged with obstructing traffic, resisting arrest, and Garrett was charged with assaulting an officer. They both spent the night in the 12th District lockup. But when they went to court next month, the officers never showed, and the case was dropped. They filed a civil suit against the police department for false arrest and excessive force, and the city quickly settled for $30,000. Their attorney says he believes police failed to show because they knew they'd made a bad arrest.
The last thing they want to do is get in trouble where they lose their job. So that's why it is definitely a tactic to avoid that trial and that proceeding and that commitment to the facts about what happened.
Fox 32 and the Better Government Association learned of the couple's story while researching an investigation into officers missing court dates. We wanted to know how often it happens and why. After filing a Freedom of Information request, police provided us with a one-page response saying that since 2013 there have been more than 3,000 instances where officers were required to appear but failed to do so. They offered no explanation why.
This is a breakdown in transparency, it's a breakdown in responsibility, it's a breakdown in accountability.
Andy Shaw of the BGA says if indeed cops aren't showing up when they make a bad arrest,
it ends up costing us money and wasting our time and undermining the judicial process, and it's unfair to those arrested, it's unfair to the victims, and it's unfair to the taxpayers.
While there are any number of reasons why cops miss court dates, attorneys we talked to say they're familiar with dozens of examples of officers failing to show after making a questionable arrest.
They punched me in my face about 3 times.
Devontae James suffered a broken jaw after an encounter with officers at his grandmother's home on the west side in 2013. James was charged with resisting arrest, but that was dropped when the officers failed to appear in court. He's now suing the city for damages.
I was in tears because it was like, you did something to me, now you don't want to show up.
Our feeling is that when an officer knows that there's going to be a problem on a case, when an officer, in a sense, has some sense of his own liability or concern, he's not going to want to make an issue about it.
Perhaps that's what happened in the case of the bike-riding couple, who heard the arresting officer say this as he was driving them to the lockup.
I'll go to court on these clowns.
I think if you're going to put somebody through that for the night, you owe it to them to show up and be held accountable for it.
The BGA is now suing the police department for access to the database it keeps regarding officers missing court appearances. In a statement, Chicago police say they take non-appearances very seriously. If they find the absence is not excused, the officers can be disciplined. And the statement says if they're made aware of an allegation against an officer through a civil suit, an internal affairs investigation will be conducted. But Jeff, what they're still not telling us is of the 3,000 cases where they failed to appear, how many of those were excused and even what type of cases these were. Were these traffic cases, drug cases? We just don't know.
All right. Dane Placko, thank you.